Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Global Women in Security Alliance 2020, our virtual series. My next guest, Ms. Deborah Avery. She's the head of international assistance at the Anvil Group. Ms. Deborah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jack.
We're going to talk about COVID-19 mental wellness. Boy, what a topic. Your subtitle is How We've All Been Affected, and every single human being on Earth has definitely been affected by this in one way or the other, good or bad. It's probably one of the most significant events in human history as far as I'm concerned. But first, let's tell us a little bit about Deborah. Tell us what you do over there at the Avery Group.
Thank you. Well, thank you ever so much for the opportunity to participate in this event. I'm really pleased to be able to talk with you today. So I'm the head of international assistance at the Anvil Group. I've been with the company over 6 years. I've benefited from over 20 years experience within the assistance and insurance sectors, and I'm highly customer centric and passionate about helping organisations mitigate evolving risk to their employees and assisting clients to embed and continuously improve their duty of care strategies, which, as you can imagine, has come to the forefront this year.
Let's start by defining mental wellness. What does mental wellness mean to you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, we all have mental health, and to stay well, we need to ensure we look after our psychological and emotional needs as much as we do our physical needs, understanding that we're all different and deal with issues differently. How one person reacts in a situation can be very different to someone else. We don't know what others have experienced that may lead them to react in a certain way. And taking COVID into consideration, someone who has been directly or indirectly impacted as a result of this illness may deal with the pandemic and lockdown situations very differently to someone who hasn't experienced any issues during this time or feels like they haven't had any issues. I mean, I think back to when I was growing up, there was always a stigma associated with mental health issues or learning difficulties, etc. However, society has thankfully moved on since then, and there are great platforms and support available with an openness to discuss such sensitive topics. It's not just about a diagnosed mental illness. To ensure we remain fit and well physically and psychologically, it's important to help identify issues that may impact employees, as well as provide the right level of support needed. You can have bad mental illness, but good mental health. This is typically where you've been diagnosed with a mental health condition, which is being well managed. On the other hand, you may not have been diagnosed with a mental illness and have bad mental health. As an example, someone who suffers with anxiety, which isn't being managed. I do feel very fortunate to work in an industry that's able to develop and embed good strategies for our clients to help better support their employees whilst at home and abroad from elements that may impact them both physically and psychologically.
Now, those are excellent points because I think everybody has a pretty high level of anxiety nowadays, and it's all about how you cope. And when it flips over into mental illness, it's a different story. So very well stated. Now, how has your company been impacted during COVID, and how have you guys adapted? There must have been a big pivot on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think because of the industry that we're in, we're already prepared. We have that state of preparedness already, and we've been monitoring. We were early on monitoring the situation to keep our clients well informed. And therefore, we were able to act very quickly, enacting our business continuity plans. We identified those that were deemed vulnerable within our business very early on, and we put strategies in place for them to work from home and, where needed, to shield. We listened and heard what our employees had to say and what they needed most. We identified what our employees needed to carry out their role from home and give them the tools to do the job, which was identified as quite an important aspect. We've not had to furlough anyone. In fact, we've been able to keep them very busy, providing them and our clients with extended services to support the changing demands throughout this period. Unlike some other professions, our teams have been absolutely immersed in COVID every day since the early onset of the pandemic. Our teams are well informed and continue to monitor the situation daily. However, what that's meant to them is that they've had no respite. when they get home, it's on the news, their family, their friends, it's on everyone's conversation points. And therefore, it's more important than ever to look after our people's mental health and emotional needs. So we've been able to put in place flexible working practices. Our office has remained open still for specifically for people with physical or psychological reasons why they haven't been able to work at home. But of course, we've put mitigation measures in place within the office environment to make sure that they maintain that they're safe and well. In addition to that, we have an employee assistance programme, but we've also given our employees direct access to our clinicians and our counsellors. And we've been having daily check-ins with our teams and with individuals as and when needed as well.
So, what changes have you implemented to support returning to the workplace? My opinion is we might not be returning to the workplace as soon as people think, right? And maybe there's going to be a new model where it's a hybrid. Half the employees are at home and half are at work. Tell us about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you have to be flexible within the working environment. It doesn't always fit every organisation. In the nature of what we provide our clients, there is an element, you're absolutely right. And we have a very blended approach to some working at home, some working in the office, depending on the need for that particular role, but also the individual themselves. But before we had anyone returning to the office, the business carried out an extensive risk assessment on our workplace and our workforce. We provided occupational health assessments for those that were deemed extremely vulnerable to help identify any specific changes or support needed to be put in place for them specifically, and to continue shielding if needed. Our own developers have created and deployed a Fit to Work app. This means that our teams have a way of self-assessing their symptoms and their ability to come into the office before travelling to work, which also alerts HR. If anyone is feeling unwell but able to work, then they can do so from home. We have a temperature scanner at the entrance to our offices, so before entering the office, employees have their temperature taken. And we're all also able to social distance in the office by limiting the desks that are used, as well as putting a specific COVID rota in place with a maximum number of people allowed in the office at any given time. And what was really key as well, as part of that risk assessment, was identifying items that would potentially be used by individuals, particularly, when we're looking at hot desking and, the shared equipment. So we made sure that everyone had their own personal equipment, so no shared devices such as telephones and headphones, etc. That was all dedicated to certain individuals. We set up sanitisation stations. All employees have their own hand sanitizer and desk cleaning equipment. We have a one-way system around the office space, not just the office, but our rest areas as well. And we've offered and provided all employees and their families with antibody testing, which took place earlier this year. We also have weekly COVID meetings to continually assess the risk and government changes, including clinical developments and the general wellness of our employees.
How have you been helping to support your clients throughout COVID? Each business I've seen has a different model. I mean, some are on one side, severe lockdown, on the other side, open. There's got to be a lot of different paths here to doing business nowadays.
Yeah, absolutely. And our approach has always been very bespoke to each of our clients. So their one client needs will be very different to another. Throughout this period, we've been working very closely with them as a whole organisation to understand what their needs are and how to meet those. We've already had great support in place with our assistance services, which included psychological support and counselling. So we've been able to provide, ongoing medical treatment, COVID testing, repatriation, sort of monitoring of the situation, counselling services where needed, updating our clients from a corporate perspective with our global daily global reports and monitoring. We have a microsite specifically designed for COVID. We've deployed the Fit to Work app and we can provide managed responses on that for those that are feeling unwell or presenting symptoms. And again, they can, if someone is presenting symptoms, they can speak to our clinicians. We can organise testing if required. We've also provided wellness and psychological webinars for our clients to participate in, as well as I've said, the PCR COVID testing, antibody testing as well. We're doing an awful lot of medical screening at the moment, particularly pre-return to work or travel. So identifying associated risks due to individual personnel's medical history and lifestyle, to understand their sort of COVID risk factors, particularly, and any impact travel might have on that. We also have a COVID advisory board for our clients, providing direct access to doctors for their teams and to address issues or concerns people may have in returning to work or returning to their normal duties.
Now, one thing we didn't do at the beginning is kind of split the difference between mental wellness and mental illness. You did talk about it briefly. They're slightly different things. We can all function with mental wellness issues, but maybe not mental illness. How has COVID affected your own perceptions on mental illness versus mental wellness? Because mental wellness is where we want to be ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always thought I've had a high level of emotional intelligence and have been able to pick up on the smallest changes in someone's demeanour or behaviour. However, COVID has really made me reevaluate my responses and thought process to better consider others, particularly if you're looking at some people that have diagnosed mental illnesses, and how COVID and the restrictions that have been put on them this year, and how they may react in those types of situations, and how they would potentially react in certain situations. So, as examples, when when the government has put restrictions in around wearing masks in enclosed places, so how the reactions of people when others aren't wearing masks, and the fact that it's become the norm, people become a lot more judgmental of those that aren't wearing face masks without actually considering the impact to somebody who suffers with anxiety, let's say. So therefore, wearing a mask can heighten that level of anxiety and make them feel worse. And therefore, but other people don't see that, because mental illness, mental wellness is sometimes hidden. It's always hidden. No one really knows what's happening with somebody, and it does have a broader impact. And I have somebody very close to me in my family who suffers with anxiety and is diagnosed with a mental illness, and how she's reacted throughout this period was quite a surprise for me, in the sense that she doesn't leave the home. She's agoraphobic, doesn't feel safe, has anxiety attacks when she comes to leave the home. So you would think, being in lockdown, not being able to leave, and being told to stay indoors, would potentially make her feel a less pressure, more relieved. But actually, what has happened is it's had the opposite effect, in the sense that the choice was taken away from her. So therefore, her anxiety became heightened because she felt trapped. The choices were taken away from her. She wasn't able to see her family, and therefore, it had a greater impact on her than we potentially would have thought. In addition to that, we've also lost a very close family member to COVID earlier this year, and I suppose the impact that's had on the family, not being able to have everybody at the funeral, not being able to have a wake to say goodbye, and the social elements that you associate with the loss of a family member, not being able to be with them to say goodbye, and also the guilt that other family members may have felt in bringing the illness into the home, and then the survival guilt that comes with that. And obviously, they're all my own personal experiences this year, but I'm absolutely sure that a lot of people have experienced that and probably can understand that themselves. For me personally, I've had to find alternative ways this year to make sure that I say, family to me is hugely important. So being able to see my children and my grandchildren. So what I've personally done myself is, we purchased a portal, so we'd have story time with the kids, and so we could have an opportunity daily to still connect with them and to see them, which is hugely important for me.
Those are very good thoughts. Here's what I think. I'm not sure this is sustainable. We may be able to get by this period with relative success. There'll be some problems. There'll be positive things that come out of it as well. But it's unique in that when countries are at war, or when countries have great poverty, downturns in economy, things like that, people are still together supporting each other physically, right? We need that human interaction. Mm-hmm. Do you think that this model, which is really based on isolation, do you think it's sustainable? I'm not sure we can go much longer before it has a really severe downturn.
Yeah, that's some really good thoughts there. In some respects, you're absolutely right. You think to yourself, how much longer can we keep this up? How much longer can we sustain this? But it is about we're all in this together. We're not alone. How you're feeling today is how someone else may be feeling tomorrow. And keeping those positive thoughts, keeping those messages, making people feel good, give good messages, brokering positive actions and behaviours. It is okay not to be okay. Find things you love to do and enjoy. Don't put pressure on yourself in regard to people's expectations. Find ways to communicate. In this, if this had happened 15 years ago, we wouldn't be able to communicate like we are now and like we are today. We've got some amazing tools at our resource in order to make sure that we can still communicate. And whilst we may be isolated in our homes, we're not actually isolated from our community. So it's hugely important that we do reach out when we need to speak to people. Send a card to someone to say that you're thinking of them, a friend that you miss dearly and aren't able to see. Buy yourself some flowers. Do you need a reason? And be grateful every day for the small things, because I think that really, really matters.
Deborah Avery, she's the head of international assistance at the Anvil Group. Ms. Deborah, excellent thoughts. A lot of empathy there, and empathy is going to win the day. We need to get through this all together, like you say. We've been speaking about COVID-19 mental wellness and how we've all been affected. Thanks so much for coming on the Global Women in Security Alliance 2020, and good luck to you.
Thank you very much, and you.